So I'm actually gonna wait till a couple people get in here so I can start explaining, what is lust. But till then, I'll explain to y'all, exactly how I came across this subject and this topic and everything like that. So really, I was actually at the barbershop getting my hair cut, and my barber was explaining to me that there's different types of forms of lust, right? Lust isn't just something that is sexual, but lust can be something that is mental, right? It can be something that is spiritual. So I'm about to get ready to dive into what are the forms of lust. I'm also going to be explaining what is lust, right? I'm also going to be explaining, what is lust and everything like that, just in case, y'all interested in things like that, right? So I'll wait till I get a couple more people up here, at least two more people. Because honestly, I feel like it's imperative, man. I feel like we should know the common forms of lust, right? We're so used to just the spiritual, or we're so used to, just what they say about lust as being like a sexual thing, but lust is really a spiritual thing as well. So yeah. So actually, I'll just start out by explaining it like this: what are forms of lust? All right, y'all. So I'm actually up in the Delmar Loop. It's a bit, loud and stuff like that. So just try to hear me, man. So basically, what are forms of lust, right? Forms of lust extend beyond just sex, right? Encompassing intense craving for power, money, food, which is gluttony, knowledge, material things, or even specific smells, right? So essentially, any overwhelming desire that controls you or your will, including spiritual extremism or obsessive emotional connections, often described in religious context as the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, right? Let me read that again. So essentially, lust is any overwhelming desire that controls your will, including spiritual extremism or obsessive emotional connections, often described in religious context as lust of the flesh, right? Lust of the eyes or the pride of life, right? So, since we know that, right, what are the common forms of lust that we are not necessarily aware of, right? So, sexual lust, right? We're aware of sexual lust, right? That is the intense craving for sexual gratification, right? Often involving fantasy, pornography, or inappropriate attention. The second form of lust is the lust for power, and we know that in today's society we have a lot of people that are power driven and shit like that, right? So, like, is watching porn lust? Yes, watching porn is lust, right? It's actually a form of sexual lust, right? Meaning that it embodies intense cravings for sexual gratification, often involving fantasy. That means you're thinking about, an interaction with a female, or pornography, or it could just be inappropriate attention, right? So basically, the second point is we have the lust for power, right, which is a unhealthy drive to control others or situations for personal gain rather than benevolent purposes. And again, the second point or the second form of lust is power, right? An unhealthy drive for control of others or situations for personal gain rather than for benevolent purposes. So a lot of people may not be sexually, involved in their lust, but if you have a lust for power, then you are just as guilty of being lustful for something, right? Good morning. What's the word? What's the word? So the third point that we have is the lust for material possessions or money. This isn't necessarily acquainted with power, right? But this is just the possession. This is the thing itself, right? So lust for material possessions and money, right? So basically, this is greed or the overwhelming desire for wealth and things, right? So if you walking around here and you constantly want you a car, right? You want you a crib, you want this, you want that, and it's almost like an intense feeling that you just need this, that you want this, then that is a form of lust as well, right? This is the lust for material possessions, right? And money, right? Let me read that again. This is greed or the overwhelming desire for wealth and things, right? So you can want things in life, right? You can want a car, you can want a house, you can want some new shoes, right? But you can't have a overwhelming desire for it, right? It's almost like you're getting connected to it, you're getting attached to it. And depending on how much of a wanting or a desire that you have for it, this can act as weighing your heart down, right? This can act as weighing your heart down because we know if we can't get a certain thing, if we can't get a certain amount of money, this is going to make us feel, you know, horrible in a way, right? Have a nice gift, love you, and I love you too. So basically, the third form of lust is gluttony, right? This is a lust for food or drinks, right? So basically, this is just craving or drinking beyond need, right? Craving food or drinking beyond a need to the point where it's becoming in this obsession, right? So I'm not saying that y'all can't drink, or the word isn't saying that you can't drink. It's just saying that you cannot eat or drink beyond your needs, right? And a lot of people nowadays often drink and eat beyond their needs, right? You have some people that have so much food while you have others that have nothing, right? So the fifth form of or the fifth form of lust, right, is considered emotional lust, and this is a lust that a lot of people don't know about, right? Emotional lust is a longing for intense emotional connection or feelings, sometimes for the sake of the feeling itself, not the person, right? So a lot of people, let me read that one more time so y'all can understand this. Emotional lust is also a form of lust. It is a longing for intense emotional connection or feelings, sometimes for the sake of the feeling itself. So a lot of people can hop in and jump into relationships with a certain person because they want love, they want connection, they want companionship. But it's probably not even the person themselves that's wanting, it's probably not the person themselves that you are wanting, but it is the feeling, right? Like a lot of people nowadays get into relationships and stuff like that for certain seasons and stuff like that, right? A person may get into a relationship just to say, oh, I have a girlfriend, oh, I have a boyfriend, right? But people don't understand that this is a form of emotional lust that a lot of people often fall into, right? This is a longing for emotional connection or feelings, sometimes for the sake of just feeling itself, not even the person, right? So I'm sure that a lot of y'all have been in relationships where, y'all gotten with a person and X, Y, and Z, and, they didn't necessarily really like you on some shit like that, but they just wanted to just say, oh, I have a boyfriend, oh, I have a girlfriend, oh, we doing this, oh, we doing that. Like, people have to understand that, people get into relationships just to feel something, right? A lot of people don't just get into relationships because they have a love for this person, right? Or they love this person. A lot of times it's because of the title, right? So that was the fifth form of emotional lust. The first form is sexual lust. The second form is the lust for power. The third form is the lust for material possessions or money. The fourth form of lust is gluttony, right? And this is a lust for food, drinks, etc., right? And then the fifth point is emotional lust. But you also have two more points, and I feel like a lot of people, don't really allow, themselves to really look at themselves from this perspective, right? So you have a spiritual lust, right? And a spiritual lust is often extreme zeal for a religious goal that becomes an obsession, right? So this is what you would call like a person that's fasting for 40 days on some shit like that, right? Knowing damn well that they have to eat something. This is an extreme form of lust, right? This is an extreme form of lust, right? Like, we not, Christ, we not Jesus, so we're not going to be able to just not eat shit for 40 days and, 40 nights, right? People have to understand is that a lot of times you can get so spiritually and emotionally involved that it becomes extremism, right? To the point where you actually dabbling and dipping into different religious cultures and, just opening your vessel up to a lot of shit, right? And again, I am up in the Delmar Loop, so it is quiet. Bro, stop yapping. It's not clear who I am. Sutures, no, it's not. But basically, you have spiritual lust, right? All right, so you have spiritual lust, and then the last one is intellectual lust, right? This is a lust that a lot of people don't know about, but you can basically be just as knee deep in this lust as sexual lust, right? Because this is a obsessive desire for knowledge or learning. Like a lot of times, you know, yeah, I heard that quote, "Curiosity killed the cat." Haha, that sounds nice. Yeah, I know about the quote, right? Curiosity killed the cat, right? Sometimes being too curious, sometimes trying to learn everything and know everything before your time is, can almost be demise to you, right? Because we're not supposed to know everything, right? We're not supposed to be able to learn and dissect everything. Sometimes we have to let things just come in the proper order that they do, right? So basically, what are the key characteristics of these forms of lust, right? So basically, intensity. The intensity, right, in these forms of lust, right, it's an intense craving or longing, not just a normal desire, right? So the key characteristics, right, lust, it's an intense craving or longing, right, not just a desire. So it's not you. So essentially, man, it's not just you just wanting something. Will God forgive you for every sin? Absolutely. So basically, this is an intensity, right? This is a intensity, right? Also, control. Lust is about control, right? Desire takes control of your will and intellect rather than the other way around, right? So lust is anything that takes control of your desire and your intellect, right? And a lot of times, right, spiritual lust, intellectual lust, sexual lust, right, that takes control of your will. That takes control of your, way of thinking and organizing thing, right? So then the third characteristic between these forms of lust is improper ordering, right? The desire is for something improperly ordered, meaning that the desire is not God ordained, but rather something controlled or something controlling you, i.e., the devil, demons, right? Through immense emotional desires. And a lot of times our emotions can be demons, right? Like emotions literally are like a form of a demon, right? There is just an intensity behind how much you involve yourself with this demon. Like the Bible says that you're supposed to have balance, right? And I say that balance is essentially having control over all these aspects of yourself, right? Because you have 7 forms of lust, you have 7 chakras, right? So when they say put on the full armor of God, I believe that you're putting on a piece of armor for of course lust, right? You're putting on a piece of armor for all the forms of uh, all the forms of sin, right? Particularly the 7 deadly sins, right? So yeah, I actually wrote this down, just to come with proper information and stuff like that. So, I hope that y'all, got something out of this. Y'all can always replay the video, and I may just explain it again, right? Just in like a more quiet environment, right? So, yeah, shit. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for joining me. Right, y'all be a peace. Shit.